Hello. Hello. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Cofield, and I'm the chair of graduate acting. And on behalf of Allison Green, who's the dean of the Tisch School of the Arts, we're thrilled to welcome you to this special celebration of the visionary universe of Zelda Fichandler. Zelda, her words, her vision, her legacy. You know, personally, this night means so much to me because I'm not only honored to assume the mantle of graduate chair that Zelda held, I've had the privilege of performing down at arena stage many times in my acting career. I think about Zelda's footprint and how it still is guiding me. I was also a member of the acting company. So right there, the overlaps into the universes that Zelda has created has been transcendent in my life. So tonight, we're going to go on a tour of Zelda's infinite variety, inspired by two remarkable new publications. A collection of Zelda's speeches and writings entitled The Long Revolution, edited by Todd London, and To Repair the World by Mary B. Robinson, a biography of Zelda in the form of an oral history. We've assembled an impressive roster of friends, former students, colleagues, and collaborators. When Zelda took over the reins here at Graduate Acting in 1983, it was an idiosyncratic, chaotic training program, very downtown, if you will, located in the dark cubby holes of 2nd Avenue. Well, look at us now. We're here on the stage of the African Grove Theater, an ancestral space inspired by a play Zelda produced at Arena back in 1992. Wow, we come full circle. So sit back, enjoy these comfy new seats, because they are comfortable. Enjoy the excellent acoustics, and revel in the adventure that is Zelda Fichandler. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Larry Maslin. I'll be your host for this evening. It's quite extraordinary and quite humbling to see all of you out here tonight and backstage, and everyone who made sacrifices to come here. People keep asking me, how long is this going to be? And I say, well, how long were the shows at Arena Stage? They won't be that long, I promise. But one of the reasons is, unprecedentedly, everyone we asked to participate tonight said yes. And why wouldn't they? I look at all of you and I think if a comet flew down from the sky, which would not be unprecedented given what's going on in the last couple of weeks, if a comet flew down and came into the space, the American theater would have to start all over again. We'd have to go up around the corner to Astor Place and have a riot and start all over again. It's a theater history joke, and sometimes I feel like one too. We're really gathered here because of an incredible confluence of events, which are two extraordinary books that happen to come out in the zeitgeist, you know, at roughly the same time. And together, they form this tremendous composite picture of Zelda Fichandler and all the wonderful things that she accomplished in her life and beyond. The Long Revolution was edited by Todd London from the vast writings of Zelda Fichandler. It's called The Long Revolution. It could be called The Long Evolution. It took a long time, but I think perhaps the best subtitle is The Long Devotion. Todd London was beautifully, movingly devoted to Zelda and devoted to the idea that her words, which we've all heard at various transient, transcendent points in our life, should be set down and should be there for posterity. And I can't think of anything that would mean more to Zelda, and I hope will mean more to future generations of actors and theater artisans. So I want to bring to the stage Todd London.
Hi, this is a moment I have been waiting for a long time. I'm gonna read a little bit, but just before I do, I think it was maybe 2019 when I posted on Facebook that the book was happening. And a bunch of people who are in the house today were like, we have to have a party, we have to do a celebration. And that was 5 years ago. And there's been a lot of waiting for this moment. And so it just feels like this incredibly fulfilling thing, and also strange because in my travels through Zelda land and life, so many of you have been there. I feel like Dorothy, like you were there, and you were there, and you were there. It's nuts. And I'm just so happy we can be here today, celebrating a woman who had twin obsessions. One was that each of us flourish to be exactly as we are meant to be. And the other was an obsession with company and our connectivity. So the fact that we are ourselves in this incredible company at NYU with STC and TCG, it's just, as they say, everything. I realized in preparing for today and this book that so many of you know Zelda better than I do. You had longer, more intimate relationships with her. I've had a very intimate relationship with her brain over the last 11 years and her writing and her over the course of a lifetime. But I want to explain and maybe justify how I came to do this book. So I'm going to read a little from the introduction and then move away. I met Zelda many times over a 40-year span. I swear I remember every time. I even remember when I first heard of her standing with my directing teacher in a college hallway. And I remember the second time when a girlfriend at that same college auditioned for Arena's apprenticeship program. She recounted what Zelda had said at the audition. "You're so calm," Zelda reportedly said, surprised at the young actress's unflappability. I remember hearing my employers talking about her throughout the 80s in Washington, D.C. theaters and at theater communications groups' offices in New York. They spoke of her with simple awe, always as Zelda, the way ancients might have spoken of Moses. And I remember each of the 4 colleagues who introduced me to her, including in her own theater, with Jim Nicola introduced me to her, where I was assistant directing him on a holiday reading. These introductions occurred many years apart because, as you might guess, Zelda did not remember me. I also remember during a 1988 artistic director retreat at Storm King Arts Center in New York, the first words other than hello, she spoke to me. I was there to help facilitate the meeting and write about it for what would become a book, The Artistic Home. She was there to be Zelda. She spoke to me exactly twice, challenging me both times. First, I introduced her to the woman at my side. "She's my wife," I said. "I'm sure she's a lot more than that." At some points in the day-long retreats, I posed a question to a table of artistic directors. She turned the table on me. "What do you think?" I mumbled something like, "I don't think anything, I'm just the writer here." She stared at me hard, as though to remember the face she would soon forget for 37 years, when she would ask me to be the keeper of her legacy project. Imagine how not calm, how utterly flappable I was when, around 2013, and out of the blue, she called me. "Todd, this is Zell." She said it as if we'd been to the movies the night before and she'd left her lipstick in my car. "Zell, what's the diminutive of Moses?" She wouldn't have recognized me on the street, but apparently she'd been reading me for years. She claimed to have spent the past several weeks rereading me, By a quirk of timing, I had 2 books out that year, my own essay collection and An Ideal Theater, which contained founding visions for a century of our theaters. I quoted Zelda on the flyleaf, quote, "Separately and then together we forged these theaters. We forged a better way. We scratched it out, hacked it, ripped it, tore it, yanked it, clawed it out of the resisting, unyielding, nose-thumbing environment." In the introduction to an essay of hers, I called her the great founding rabbi of the American theater. Over the next few months, Zell called to speak to me about my writing and hers. She spoke about the field and how happy she'd been at NYU. She advised me through a professional transition and encouraged me to take a job at the University of Washington. "Todd, this is Zell. I dreamed about you last night. You have to take that job in Seattle. You're a teacher. When Zell tells you where to go, you go there. You'll be so happy," she said. I wasn't, but I don't blame her. She asked me for help with her book and had Angie Moy, her assistant and long-term pillar of support, send me pages and files, adding to the boxes my family was packing for the move. Before I left for Brooklyn for the Pacific Northwest, she invited me to spend a few days with her in her apartment in the Colorama neighborhood of Northwest DC. I'd never been alone with Zelda, even for a minute, and though I was 57 years old, I suddenly felt as if I'd never been alone with anyone. I was that nervous. I tried on and discarded numerous outfits, though I don't own outfits. I worried about our meals together, unsure what to do if she served me bell peppers, which I don't like, or if she found me uncouth or noticed arugula in my teeth. I knew Zelda suffered from intense chronic pain from fibromyalgia, and I wondered how it might manifest. If I shook her hand, would she scream? They were the nerves you might feel when in an arranged marriage you're about to meet your intended for the first time. Like that, but also as though you're sneaking off to have an affair in late life, carting the baggage of years and buzzing with old-timey expectations. Should I bring flowers, chocolate? Will we hug at the door, sit on the bed together, kiss goodbye? I was in a state, and though I did my best to disguise it, the state lasted for the 3 days we spent together over papers and lunches, stories and reminiscences, as though we'd known each other for 100 years, which we had and hadn't. She called me in Seattle at regular intervals over the next 18 months, and we continued our affair of the heart, mind, and book. I would pace the living room from window to window, looking out at the camellias and Japanese maple, listening, confiding, trying across the 3,000 miles and 33 years that separated us to stay present, to build an honest relationship based on Zelda-esque inquiry, elaboration, and exactitude. Maybe I thought she holds the key to becoming a wise elder, how to stay truly alive as an artist and human, how to resist fixity and the backward tides of age. I needed her to teach me. She sent me notes, sometimes scrawled in the margins of Xerox essays or speeches she'd uncovered, and letters. I think of you daily, although you haven't heard from me in a long time. She would talk about her progress or lack thereof on the book. Then, in February 2016, facing a surgery from which she feared she might not recover, she called again. "I have an important question to ask you," she said, suddenly tentative. I wish I could remember her exact words because it was the single most extraordinary conversation in my professional life. She asked whether I would be willing to take charge of her papers if she couldn't continue the work. Would I do her the kindness of finishing her book for her? I don't recall what she said because I knew what she was asking. This I do remember, my heart's thunder, face going still, tears pooling. She carried on as though apologizing for a burdensome request she was laying on me, as though it might be an option to say no. This time I didn't mumble. I took calming breaths and searched for words beyond the cliches bubbling up. Honor of a lifetime, humble, moved. Oh my God, of course, yes. I don't want to leave you with the sense that Zelda, by placing her papers, her baby, into my hands after her decades of deep consideration and doodling, was acting on instinct or sentiment, though the moment was deeply emotional, and though the moment was a deeply emotional passage as she entrusted me with this life of writing to my care. It was a dramatic scene, and we played it for real because it was real. But Zelda was nothing if not strategic. She left little to chance. Practiced in the art of casting, she also made sure that chosen actors followed her direction. She had already sought confirmation from mutual friends that I could be trusted to follow through. I found this out in time. As if the trust weren't enough, she sought additional assurances as well, that they would check up on me and make sure I got the job done. Brilliant revolutionary leader she was. She possessed just the right blend of Chekhov and Don Corleone. Here you go, Zelda. You made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and we made it to Moscow.
As I think we all know, Zelda was a prism through which we saw ourselves and saw humanity and saw the great works of world literature. So it's only appropriate that the next great complementary book about Zelda would be an oral history. Mary B. Robinson, a very gifted artist in her own right, interviewed about 175 people. Zelda was large, she contained multitudes, and this book reads like a novel. So I want to bring aboard Mary Robinson, and just also to mention that the words you're going to hear tonight are Zelda's words, and from different speeches she gave, which are in Todd's books, but also reflections of the oral history that Mary Robinson so skillfully cultivated for her book. Mary.
It is really, it's the right place, really thrilling to be here finally and to see you all. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain how I came to write the book. I'm going to talk and read a few excerpts from the preface. You'll know I'm reading from the book when I put on my glasses. Pull up the book. So I was an aspiring director in college. 2 months before my graduation, with no idea what I would do once I got out of college or what there was to do, when the theater department put together a panel called Regional Theater, Is It For You? Because I decided it was. It was moderated by Peter Zeisler. There were 4 artistic directors, and Zelda was the only woman. And so I'm sure you can guess what happened next. I was just bowled over by her personality, by her eloquence, by her beliefs. And she became my role model on that day. And for 15 years, my long-term goal was to become the artistic director of a regional theater because that's what she had done. And I think my reasons for wanting to do that may have changed, but that goal never wavered for those years. A number of people have asked me what exactly did she say on that day, and I wish I could remember. I'll read a bit here. I don't know exactly what she said, but I know how she made me feel. Aside from the practical discovery that there was a place for me in the professional theater if I could earn it, what Zelda gave me 2 months before my college graduation was the belief that a life in the theater could be an essential calling, a way to try to create and evoke the deep, transformative, almost spiritual feelings of connection with others that I occasionally experienced myself as an audience member at the theater. And the title of the book is To Repair the World because of her deep belief that that's what theater at its best could do. She, I think, first heard this when she was a small child, but it was later in her life that she talked frequently about that as theater's mission, to contribute to repairing the world. So then I got to know Zelda slightly in the next 20 years at TCG conferences and so forth. I was running a theater in Philadelphia, and she was visiting her son Hal, and she came to a play that I directed, and we would talk from time to time. But I got to know her well when she gave me incredible support through the most difficult professional crisis I faced. And not just at the time, but afterwards. For about a year and a half, as I was going through a transition, she invited me to direct at NYU. She had lunch with me frequently. She wrote me letters. And at the time, I didn't really realize it, but I now realize she was really looking out for me. 1 second, I'm gonna get some water. I would say for the last 20 years of her life, she was a friend, not as close a friend as many people in this room. She was with many people here, but we would, once she retired, we would talk on the phone. I actually sent her, I think I told you this, Todd, I sent her a collection of Todd's essays, and she of course knew exactly who he was, and I think was in the process of talking with you about taking over her book, or at least working on it with her. 3 years after she passed away, I was talking with Laura Penn, who's here tonight, about we were trying to figure out if anybody was writing a biography of her. We knew that Todd had taken over the Long Revolution, but we understood that that was not a memoir. And we said, well, is somebody writing something about her life? Because it's, you know, it's really a story that should be told. And Laura said, I think you should do it, Mary. And planted a seed and gave me permission. And from there, I went on, that was in the summer of 2019. In February 2020, I traveled down to Virginia. George Mason University is where her archives are. I spent several days there going through just a few, 200 boxes. And there are even more of Arena Stage. It's just incredible trove. And I decided that I would go back there as frequently as I could to start doing the necessary research to eventually write a biography of her, try to. That was February 2020. So of course, the next month, the archives closed for a year and a half, and I was not able to access them. But I started doing the only thing I could do, which is to interview people virtually. So I started with people I knew. I moved on to people that other people had put me in touch with. Larry's book, The Arena Adventure, was a Bible to try to, you know, find out who some of those early actors were at Arena. And I just had some terrific conversations with people, many of whom are here tonight. I just want to thank Joan Bale Thorne for being here. Joan was Zelda's assistant from 1953 to 55 at Arena, and many, many other people. Jane Alexander, and so many people here from the Arena days, and then people from NYU for NYU days too, faculty, students. So I'm going to read a little more now. I guess I interviewed about 120 people before I ever got back into the archives. And here's what occurred to me during that time. Again and again, I heard the sentence, "She changed my life." I realized that my own experience of Zelda was not unusual, and that hundreds of other people who heard her speak, worked with her, and came into her orbit had a similar response to her. What was it about Zelda, I wondered, that caused so many people to feel transformed by her? It was not just that she founded the theater that became the prototype for so many subsequent nonprofit theaters across the country at a time when women were not expected to have careers at all. There was something about Zelda herself that deeply affected both aspiring and mature theater artists, both women and men. Something I felt myself and that I wanted to understand better. I decided to tell the story of her life as an oral history through the varying voices and perspectives of the people on whom she had such a profound impact. And then I did get back to the George Mason University Libraries in the fall of 2021, went back there 5 more times, and began to discover some amazing letters, first drafts of speeches, interviews, and really started to cull some fascinating stuff down there. And a conversation with Janet Zarish a little over a year ago persuaded me that Zelda's voice needed to be in this too. The result is a hybrid. It's an oral history, but Zelda is there in the sort of interstitial sections that introduce various parts of the oral history. And it was very important to me to keep it an oral history. I could have made it a biography. And there was a publisher that was interested in my turning it into a biography, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought what I really wanted to do was to capture her human legacy. Because we know her institutional legacy is Arena Stage, of course, and the theaters that followed in its footsteps since 1950. It's the NYU program that she recreated in the 80s and 90s. Her written legacy, of course, is her essays and speeches, now beautifully collected and edited by Todd in the volume The Long Revolution. But her human legacy are all the people on whom she had such profound impact, many of whom are in the room tonight. I'm just going to read the last paragraph. As Laura Penn, who first encountered her at an impressionable age, says, her transformation of the field was one person at a time. All these idealistic theater people, myself included, were looking for a way to channel their desire to tell stories that matter. And they found it through the work and words of a woman of missionary zeal who started a movement that grew exponentially for 70 years, but is now at an inflection point. As our field goes through the most existential upheavals it has faced since its founding, I believe that Zelda Fichandler's story will shed essential light on where American theater goes from here.
So, as I said, we have some words of Zelda, but just quickly, since we actually are the three people who wrote books about Zelda, I wrote one back in, I don't know, 90? I don't even remember. Did you find the Zelda you knew before you wrote the book was different than the Zelda when you finished the book? And if so, how?
Well, there were so many Zeldas because there were so many people I was talking to. And I realized early on, and this is one of the reasons I made it an oral history, that somebody so complex, Todd used the word prismatic, which I loved when he wrote me about his, you'd see her through a prism, so many lenses. Of course, I discovered a multitude of things about her, but I also, everybody who talked, I thought, yeah, I recognize that woman. And I was surprised.
Boasting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Todd?
Yeah, I think my sense of her just got deeper, sense of her being contradictory. And I learned a lot about that from Mary's book, because there's a lot I didn't know about her life and her life with y'all. But there's something that deepened, which is her sense of never letting go of the essence of this enterprise. And that sense that she hit, it's a point she hit again and again in her actor speeches of like, this space between us that we need to cross is the broadest space, is the hardest space to cross. And that everything really is about that. So I think I was surprised by that. And what an important writer she actually is, aside from all the rest.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think unlike the two of you, I had to write stuff and submit it to her. Which is
So sorry.
a whole other story for another time. I'll buy the drink. But I was amazed, and I shouldn't have been, but there was nothing casual about her intellect. And anything, you couldn't get anything past her. Nor, just in the sense of trying for expediency or for speed or for whatever. She was the greatest shortstop, intellectual shortstop in the history of the American theater. And I think that comes out most eloquently for someone who's not really an actor, right? She tried it once or twice. She played Eliza Doolittle in Pygmalion. in the 1950s, which she hated when you brought it up to her and reminded her. But for her ability to present things in public with clarity and emotion were unmatched. So we're going to turn now to a series of speeches made in public by Zelda. And I would like to welcome an extraordinary person to the stage.
Good evening. I'm Miriam Schmidt Campbell, and thank you. I like to think of myself as a student of Zelda's. When we worked together for almost 20 years at the Tisch School of the Arts. And tonight I have the great privilege of reading her words. And I will do my best to honor the spirit of Zelda. I'm going to read The Lion Game from American Theater Magazine, 2005. Stella Adler once quoted her father, Jacob, patriarch of the Yiddish theater, on the reasons why someone wants to become an actor. And I quote, you don't want to get up early, you don't want to work, and you're afraid to steal. But seriously, why does someone want to become an actor? Why in the world would you even dream of becoming an actor, let alone audition for a graduate acting program? Running up a debt that not only means you'll go without steak dinners and dental work, but that you could define your choices until you're middle-aged. If you're in such a program, I'm sure your mother asks you these very same questions. I hope you didn't get angry when she did, and I hope you didn't respond, I wouldn't even consider, simply can't imagine, would rather die than be a lawyer or a doctor or anything but an actor. Why, ever since I was in the 3rd grade, remember when we went to see The Sound of Music, how excited I was? That's not enough. That won't see you through. You have to really understand the nature of your commitment, the depth of it, and its sustainability under pressure. Let's say you've chosen. You insist on it to defy the odds and become an artist at all costs, financial as well as psychic. In an act of strong will and after a period of ambivalence, I'm sure, you've decided to make your way in a crowded, competitive, inhospitable profession. I congratulate you for that leap and offer some words of advice. At Tisch School of the Arts, we ask our students to hang on stubbornly to the why of their presence there. There are periods of not knowing how one thing relates to another. An actor in training must live in that state. In moments of doubt or fatigue or tedium, when you're doing repetition for a voice class or memorizing lines or rehearsing a scene at a god-awful time of night, when you think that you'll never live up to expectations, repeat the mantra of your commitment and stay the course. Since you know why you are on this path and how urgent it is for you, please give your teachers your trust. The longer you withhold it, the longer will the changes within you be delayed. Do your best to be open and vulnerable. Surrender cynicism. If you experience fear or shame, thrust through it. If you enjoy the work, that's a real bonus. You should expect to feel joy. Adopt an attitude of curiosity that will lead you into the work rather than away from it. Be patient as you discover the ways in which you are not replaceable by anyone else. I return to my first question, why would someone want to be an actor? The response to this is crucial. It is the reason I've been besotted with the theater for most of my life. If I had the gift of being an actor, I would have bent my will, energy, time, and money to become the very best one I could be. Actors are the very center of the theatrical experience. For only a human being can embody another human being. It's to see what can happen to a human in this time between two darknesses, and imaginatively, what would happen to one's own self, that audiences need the living experience of theater. The following is my why for sustaining a life in the theater for half a century. The audience, my friends and neighbors, visitors of different colors, the despairing who lead tight, circumscribed lives, the rich and comfortable who in the dark may experience guilt, and the rich and comfortable whose hunger can never be assuaged, the cognizant and the non-knowing, the old who can forget about dying for a few hours, the teenagers who, under their bravado and with rings in every part of their anatomy, yearn to be useful, the audience, the terminus of all our work. God bless them all. They enter into a conspiracy of belief with us, and it would not be moral to betray them. Theater fabricates everything, from the storm's roar to the lark's song, from the actor's laugh to her nightly flood of tears. The actor opens us to a new understanding of ourselves. What could be more important than that?
Hi, for your soul.
And I'm Nadia Bowers. Quick self story, real quick self story. I walked into her office, Wade graduated in like 2008, and she was, oh, I have my glasses. She was like, this is work for her. I hear you're dating Corey Stoll. And I was like, yeah. She was like, big ego. But I think you can handle it.
Thank you, John.
I'm still working on
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Okay, this is addressed to the Washington School of Psychiatry, 1994. Theater speaks to all the big questions that a child asks. What is death? Where will I go when I die? Who am I? Where do I stop and you begin? What is God? What is the meaning of life? How can I get what I want? Why am I being punished? Why did my balloon burst? Where did mommy disappear to? Will she come back? Why must I give up my secrets? Will somebody always be there to love me? Will my nightmares come true? If I think it, will it happen? All the big questions of life. By the time she is an adult, the child has learned to ask the smaller questions and most likely to ask them of science. But the child who lived on in us asks the big questions that only art can answer.
Shakespeare tells us we are guilty creatures sitting at a play. No, we are guilty creatures sitting in a play. We are personages in our own drama. The art of theater, the dramatic experience, starts just here, within the subjective experience of each one of us. I start with this very moment, as theater does. And since I know myself somewhat better than I know any of you, I start with myself as a character. What is my sense of reality at the moment? Who am I? As if that were answerable. How did I come to be this way? Wordsworth said, trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. Not many of us buy that anymore.
I hold these pages in my hand. It's 10 o'clock. I need new glasses. I feel annoyed about that. I do want to do a good job to get my thoughts over to you in a clear and meaningful way. Perhaps I should have worn my other shoes. I spiraled out a little. I am a teacher, a director. I head up some things. I have accomplished some things, and I have a sense of that. I have certain friends, certain relationships, certain cups and saucers, certain pieces of art, certain chairs, certain pots and pans. I too am getting older. I spiral out a bit more. It's 1994 and I have the permissions and restrictions and guilt and opportunities that American society gives to a white upper middle class woman. I can wear a pantsuit instead of a hoop skirt and go somewhere unaccompanied and earn my own money and have the illusion that I am free.
I have memories that some of you may share and memories that are just mine. These memories are as much a part of me as bulletins from my present. I remember America's entry into World War II. I heard Roosevelt's voice. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I lost a chemistry prize. I was first in a class of 500, but it was designated for the top man in the class. I remember togetherness, McCall's slogan, and the ruling ethic for mothers of the 50s. My friends moved to the suburbs then, but I remained urban. I remember signs in Washington that kept out Black people. I remember the riots after the assassination of Martin Luther King. I bedded down dozens of young people during the 4 marches in Washington in the 60s and saw 2 sons through the hippie drug culture. Now the hippies have children of their own and struggle to equal the living standards of their parents, and probably won't, but I remember it as it was. I remember Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller, and progressive jazz, and abstract expressionist, pop art, action painting. I remember a time when there was only Broadway and a few touring shows, before the over 300 theater companies America now has. I remember long skirts, short skirts, bouffant skirts, knitted skirts, and I wore slacks before it was fashion. I remember when it was chic to smoke.
Who would I be without these memories and a million more? Who would be the I? We are here and we face each other. We each have the density of this particular moment, our shared cultural past, varying according to how old we are and where we have lived, our shared biologic past, which we have in common with everyone, everywhere. And we have, last of all, our personal histories, our individual psychobiographies, the narratives of our life. Each of you has a psychobiography, and I'd love to know them, for no one of them is uninteresting. Tell me the story of your life, and I'll tell you mine. It's the opening gambit toward understanding, towards intimacy.
There's a Burmese saying that the fish dwells in the depths of the water, and the eagles in the sides of heaven. The one, though high, may be reached with the arrow, and the other, though deep, with the hook. But the heart of man at a foot's distance cannot be known. We who work in the theater in a serious way want to try to know the heart nonetheless, using in place of the arrow and hook, the tools and means of our theatrical art.
Mary, when you talked about being an artistic director, I think when you look at Zelda's vision, which was enormous as an artistic director, you get the chance to have taste, right? I mean, you get a chance to purvey your taste for audiences because it has to come from a point of view. And Zelda's taste among plays was rather remarkable in that way. And I think somewhat Arthur Miller, certainly, and European playwright Thornton Wilder, but Chekhov seems to occupy a rather large part. Do you have any thoughts about why that might have been or what it was about Chekhov?
Well, I think it was partly her Russian, she majored in Russian language and literature at Cornell. After having initially thought she would be a psychiatrist. It's interesting with that speech that was just read. I mean, I think he spoke to the complexity and the subtlety and the nuance of his work, and the rich characterizations, I think, really spoke to her. But I think there was also just a sense of connection with her roots, I believe. I mean,
Do you have anything to add to that, Todd?
No, I don't think so. Maybe just that sense of like always wanting to probe the mystery of the other person, being a queen of subtext.
Right.
Yeah.
And Chekhov can't be solved. He can only be interpreted, which I think is what she was about. So we're going to hear some beautiful first rehearsal language from Zelda, portrayed by an incredible Masha in her arena stage production.
I saw her. Hi.
First rehearsal remarks for the Three Sisters, 1983. Life, Chekhov said, is an insoluble problem. At the end of the first act of The Seagull, Dorn, one of the many doctors in Chekhov's plays, no doubt since Chekhov himself was one, is trying to comfort the distraught and unhappy Masha. All he can find to say is, "But what can I do, my child? Tell me, what can I do? What? What can I do?" This question is a leitmotif that runs through all of Chekhov's plays and ties him to our own age with its fear of nuclear war, as Chekhov's folk feared the Industrial Revolution, its international terrors, its economic displacements, and most of all, with the pervading awareness of our smallness in a gigantic universe. Our sense that we have lost control of our lives. What can we do, indeed? But what could we ever do? Life has always been lonely. Love is misplaced, and time passes and wears away our dreams. We hang on to our illusions by our fingernails. Surely, next fall, we'll be in Moscow. But they are snatched from us. We search for meanings. For love alone did nature put us in this world, says another doctor, Chebytkin. Is that it? We will work, and the time will come when everyone will know why all this is, what these sufferings are for. Is that it? What is the meaning of our lives? Chekhov wrote to his actress wife, Olga Knieper, for whom he created the role of Masha in Three Sisters. "You worry too much about the eternal verities. You ask, what is life? That is just the same thing as asking, what is a carrot? A carrot is a carrot, and nothing more is known about it." Chekhov's way is not to understand what a carrot is, but simply to show us the carrot. Let us take it from there. If life cannot be known in the sense of being decoded, penetrated, wrapped up in a solution, or even responded to in a total way, it can at least be shown and seen. We can know it by seeing it, by looking at it. Not in its meaning, but in its isness. If it can't be deciphered, at least it can be described, uncovered, open to the light of day. And good can come of this. Man will only become better when you make him see what he is like, wrote dear Anton. It was this incomparable ability to show us what we are like that makes Chekhov finally not the dramatist of doom and gloom he's been cast as, that makes his plays comedies, not tragedies. In our isness, are we not foolish, absurd, funny creatures railing and straining against a basically irrational, inexplicable universe? This ability also gives the plays their mysterious quality of affirmation. If we can't get to Moscow, at least we can keep fanning the dream. If Masha and Rashinin had an affair, at least the army is departing now, and Rashinin with it. At least Masha's husband, Kuligin, can put on his funny face, and his marriage to Masha can somehow soldier on. If the Baron is killed in a duel, perhaps he will live on in the trees, still part of the life that continues after him. And Rashinin will philosophize and complain at the next military post. And Andrei will rock the carriage and hope that his child's life will be better. And Natasha will find her place in the new rising bourgeoisie. And because life is never predictable, old Anfisa will end up with her heart's desire, her own bed in her own apartment at government expense. And the Three Sisters will huddle together in love and support and sing their song of hope and faith, and life will go on. Questions still unanswered, solutions as yet unfound. Will they ever be? Last month, the graduate acting program class of 2026 presented The Three Sisters as a classroom project. We are pleased to have members of that cohort present a scene from Act 1 as part of the continuity of Zelda's love for Chekhov as part of the training process.
Randy Danson.
Colonel has just arrived, and he's on his way up. I've never seen him before.
This will be Vershinin. Lieutenant Colonel Vershinin.
Oh, please let me introduce myself. I'm Vershinin. I'm very pleased to finally make it to your house. Look at you girls.
Oh, we're so happy to meet you too. Please take a seat.
Oh, thank you. I'm just thrilled, but there were 3 of you. I remember 3 girls, not the faces, but I remember Colonel Prozorov had 3 little girls. Oh, the memory is so vivid. I saw them with my own eyes. Where does the time go?
Colonel Vershinin is from Moscow.
Moscow? You're from Moscow.
Oh, yes, your late father was a battery commander, and I was an officer in the brigade. Maybe your face is familiar after all.
Olga!
Not yours.
Olga, come here! Lieutenant Colonel Vershinin from Moscow.
Oh, you're Olga, the oldest. And you are Masha. And you're Irina, the youngest. Huh?
You're from Moscow.
I went to school in Moscow. I began my military service in Moscow and served there ever since, until I received my battery and moved here. I'm sorry, I don't really remember you. I just remember 3 sisters. But I remember your father in perfect detail. I could close my eyes and imagine like he was still with us today. I was in your home in Moscow all the time.
I thought I remembered everyone.
You're from Moscow. So shocking.
We're returning to Moscow.
We'll be there by the fall. Moscow is our home, our real home.
We don't expect to see people from Moscow here. I remember you. Remember, Olga? They used to call him the lovesick major. You were actually a lieutenant, but you were in love with someone and they used to call you the lovesick major.
Oh God, that's right. Lovesick major. That's right.
Oh, you're so old now. Oh, you're so old.
Oh, well, when they called me the lovesick major, I was still young enough to be in love, but not anymore.
You've gotten old, but you don't look old yet.
When did you leave Moscow?
11 years ago. Why are you crying, Masha? You're going to make me cry now.
It's nothing. What street did you live on?
Old Basmani.
We did too.
I used to walk to the Krasny barracks and cross this gloomy bridge. You hear the water rumbling underneath. The river here is tremendous, an extraordinary river.
It's too cold here. Cold and mosquitoes.
Oh, no. What do you mean? Huh? The climate here is very great, very Slavic, very healthy. You know? The trees, the river, the birch tree. Oh, the beautiful, simple birch tree. It's my favorite. I mean, this seems like a good place to live, except the train station is 18 miles away and no one can tell me why.
Now I remember you. I remember you now.
Oh, and I knew your mother, too.
She's buried in Moscow.
Novodevichy Cemetery.
Can you believe I've already begun to forget what she looks like? That's how we'll all be remembered. We'll be forgotten.
Yes, we'll be forgotten. That's how it is. What matters to us, what seems important, will be forgotten or just seems strange. It's interesting, right? There's no way for us to know what will seem lofty and important or what will seem pitiful and absurd. Maybe our lives will come to seem even strange, uncomfortable, foolish, sinful.
Who knows? Maybe they'll think of our lives as sublime and they'll remember us with respect. After all, we don't torture, we don't execute. Well, at least not arbitrarily. But still, there is a great deal of suffering. We suffer in so many ways. But maybe that's a sign that we're developing morally as a society.
Our father made us learn English. Thanks to our father, we know French, German, English, and Arena knows Italian for all the good it does us.
Knowing 3 languages in a town like this is useless, like having an extra finger. Much of what we know is pointless.
Much of what you know is pointless. Huh. You know, there's no town so dull that it wouldn't benefit from pointlessly clever and educated people. So in this town of 100,000 unenlightened fools, there's only 3 people like you. Let's agree on that, yeah? 3 people who will influence the whole. And so after you're gone, let's say there's 6 more, and 12, and so on, until you take them over and now you're the majority. You see, in 200 years, life on Earth will be unbearably beautiful. That's what we're waiting for. That's what we're making. And if we haven't made it yet, we can at least dream of it and prepare for it. I mean, that's why you know more than your father and your father's father. Please, much of what we know is pointless.
I'll stay for lunch.
Hello, I'm Laura Penn with SDC, and on behalf of myself and Danny Barlow, who's the director of the SDC Foundation, thank you so much for the privilege of being here with you all. In 2008, on the eve of the union's 50th anniversary, the board of SDC asked the question, who are we? Founded by a tight group of Broadway directors and choreographers, our tagline said, a national labor union. Indeed, we had contracts and members across the country, but did we really celebrate that? SDC executive board member Tom Moore, who was also a trustee with the foundation, took the lead, and within minutes, the conversation turned to honoring Zelda. Zelda the leader, Zelda the director, Zelda the lover of directors. What could it mean to have an award in her name? What should it mean? Never short of words or ideas or questions, she was in relentless pursuit of the right idea. She wanted to pass meaning on to us, to those in this room and those who will follow us. She wanted to honor her cohort. She also wanted to know why it can't be more money. It's not enough, she would say, and Zelda is still not enough. At times, she felt like she might be too out of touch to be helpful, but those moments of doubt were fleeting. Thanks to Mary and Todd, we will now read again and again the things that mattered to her, and we will be reminded of why she mattered to us. We came to a director or choreographer who had dedicated themselves to a community over an extended period of time, an artist at the center of their creative life. She wanted this award to bear witness to their strength, resilience, and their tenacity, to say, we see you being tough in the service of something tender. She wanted to encourage artists to hold the course. She asked, can it be for bravery? Can it be for courage? Each fall, I would send her a packet, the essays from those who made the final round, finalists, and the winners. She saw reflections of the movement she helped forge and glimpses of what was to come. Some, I suspect, she knew she would not see. I hope she saw her influence and inspiration and her passion reflected back to her. She was taken by what she learned about our progress, about new ways of working and leading, ever evolving. She read about artists and succeeding in ways that she had not been able to, or perhaps hadn't even thought to try. She felt deeply about the struggles to build, about the ongoing struggles to build a life in this work, all the while never forgetting to remind me, and I suspect many of you, that it has always been hard. She found time, as long as she was able, to meet the winners each year. There are now 15 Fichandler winners leading our field, hundreds nominated, dozens have moved to the final round, 16 named finalists. Over 75 SDC members have served on review panels.
There are innumerable others, friends and family, peers, civic leaders, press, collaborators who've attended presentations hearing about what matters. She gave us a gift in allowing us to create this award in her name. She gave us a gift in taking care to make sure it had meaning to those who were named. She gave us the responsibility to carry her legacy forward. I like to think that we gave her a portal into the work in those later years of her life when she was less able to travel, even though she was always sitting right next to us, as I imagine she is this evening. Now, Rich Total.
Evening, I'm Richard Topol. I consider myself one of Zelda's actor babies. I was a member of the first class that Zelda handpicked to hear when she took over the program at NYU 40 years ago. And so I need reading classes now to read. This is on the occasion of the first Zelda Fichandler Award presented by SCC. Laura just told me beforehand that actually the speech was a 45-minute speech. So this is going to be an excerpt, don't worry. This is my dream of an award. Thank you so much. Not too heavy to get at home, not so bizarre that it has to be hidden away someplace in my apartment. An award that belongs to someone else each year, one of you perhaps, or a colleague, or a talented child, maybe one of yours, aesthetic or biological, or some artistic leader ready to move forward. And the award will go on forever and ever, as long as there are arts to support, and there will always be. When the arts fade, so does the civilization from which they grew. We won't allow that to happen. We swear that to each other. I want to say what we all know, but what I want you to know that I know. I was there at the beginning and am lucky enough to still be here while many are not, but I was not the founder of this movement. The idea for our kind of theater was there, ready to be found at a particular moment in our history post-World War II. Why just then? I'm not entirely clear. There are form givers in every new style of art, form givers in new scientific inventions, new medical discoveries, new technologies. There may seem to be just one in front, but like seeds under the snow, they emerge in small clusters, and if the plants are strong, they become widely absorbed into the culture. There are 1,000 men and women with me, more than 1,000, many thousands. I think of them, I knew and know so many of them. I feel their presence. The founders, Joe Papp and Gordon Davidson and Tyrone Guthrie and Nina Vance, and of course, Margot Jones, who was truly the first. And Jules Irving, who I met when his daughter Amy was still crawling around on the kitchen floor, and Herbert Blau, his partner, and all the others who came after them, using these founders as a model or finding their own way, each with his individual nature, his own inherent style and view of the world. And all the actors through all the years, all the directors, architects of our work, and the designers, and stage and production managers, administrators and artisans and board members and fundraisers and so on, who have made this idea concrete. So many thousands. There's hardly room for me on stage. I should move away, give room for the others. And in my mind, I do. Fans of Saul Bellow, our great master of the art of the novel, will remember a certain dog barking forlornly in Bucharest during the long night of Soviet domination of Romania. It's overheard by an American visitor in the Dean's December, who imagines these wounds as the barking plea, for God's sake, open up the universe a little. And that's what we all try to do every day. What this society has done and will do for the next half century, barking even louder, for God's sake, open up the universe a little more. I'm so honored to be chosen to stand in for the 6 or 12 who almost simultaneously ask the question, why is it that our performing arts are concentrated in New York when people live all over the place? We couldn't find a sensible answer, except the one we found. We'd make the arts in places where we found ourselves, grow where we were planted, so to speak. It's an honor for me to speak these things so close to my heart. I thank you for your attention. I wish for your flourishing.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Rauch, and I'm so happy to be with you all tonight. In 1993, I directed my first Lord production. It was at Arena Stage, and it was a contemporary and community-based version of A Christmas Carol. Half the cast were professional equity actors, and half were first-time artists from east of the Anacostia River. In fact, I was privileged to co-adapt, be one of the co-adapters on this piece with our host today, Larry Maslin. I had what I considered a brilliant directorial idea. As the ghost of Christmas Past brought Scrooge back to the Fezziwig's warehouse just after World War II, we would bisect arenas in the round space with a towering wall of cardboard boxes so that each audience side would not be able to see the other side, with black and white actors segregated on either side of this giant wall. And over the course of the party scene, they would dismantle the cardboard box, take the boxes down, and the party would become racially integrated. The visionary Doug Wager had recently taken over Arena from Zelda, but Zelda still arrived at the theater she founded for one of our earliest previews. The wall was a disaster, as you probably have guessed by now. It got stuck on its entrance. And even after lumbering on stage after this painful long time, it took so long for the actors to move all the boxes down. Let's just say that my idea or my big concept wore out its welcome pretty quickly. The next morning, I was humiliated and I received a note from Zelda. Good luck with the cardboard boxes. You have the spiritual ones all in order. And that was pure Zelda. It was a mix of unsentimental directness and generous inspiration. When I was honored to be awarded the Fichandler in 2010, little did I realize what I've now been told, that I was to be the last winner to have a conversation with Zelda. Up until then, it was an extra honor to meet, or in my case, have a very long phone conversation with the awards namesake. Zelda's concern for the field, her concern about the future of the nonprofit and the residential theater movements that she had helped start, it was palpable. And I have frankly, it made a big impression on me, and I've carried that sense of responsibility with me ever since, or tried to. I was a relative newcomer to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, but I was over halfway through my 27-year tenure as a West Coast-based artist when I received the Fichandler Award. It subtly but surely shifted the way I thought of myself, that I could be a proud representative of my region who could dare to dream to work on a national scale. It was a game changer for me, as I suspect it was, had been for all the Fichandler Award winners. I believe my fellow awardee, Vivienne Benesh, is with us here tonight. Just as Zelda changed the game of how we can define theater, how we can be responsible to our communities, and how we can define success. I want to remember those lessons, especially right now in these fraught times. Years earlier, I had sat on the TCG board when Zelda was our board leader, and each meeting opened with our president, our leader, connecting what was happening in our field to current world events. She never failed to share an inspirational quote that would literally take my breath away. She had that uncanny ability to make unlikely but inevitable connections. We know the cliche that we stand on the shoulders of the giants that preceded us, but believe me, if anyone in this room wasn't blessed to know her personally, all of us in this field stand on Zelda Fichandler's shoulders. On May 6th, Raymond O. Caldwell will receive the 2023 Zelda Fichandler Award at the SDC Foundation Awards event. Raymond serves as the producing artistic director of Theater Alliance in Washington, D.C., and he's currently in Senegal working with the State Department. He has sent us a brief video as we wanted to take a moment to hear from him directly as he joins the continuing legacy of Zelda's impact on the field.
Hi, my name is Raymond O. Caldwell. I'm the 2023 Zelda Fichandler Award recipient. Receiving this award was such an honor for a number of reasons, most profoundly because of the namesake of the award. 16 years ago, I arrived at Arena Stage as a fellow. I knew I wanted to be an artistic director, but I didn't know how to make that happen. Because Guy Berquist and Stacey Stewart were my mentors and very close to Zelda, I found myself in a series of one-on-one moments with Zelda that, looking back, absolutely transformed my career. What I learned was at the center of what Zelda built was a deep sense of community and a commitment to the people who called Washington, D.C. home. I was so deeply inspired by the way Zelda spoke about the purpose of theater and the regional theater movement. As I and a new generation of theater leaders ponder what the future of the form is, I often find myself going back to Zelda's words and ideas, reminding myself of the intentionality of why we tell stories on a stage, why we gather, to sit in a room and think deeply about the ideas of our community and to have a shared emotional experience. Zelda reinforced that lesson within me. And today, as I lead my own company, I often think, what would Zelda do? The last time I saw Zelda, I was working at a box office, trying to scrap together some extra money. And she saw me and she came up to the window and she said, "Hey, I guess artistic directors really have to do everything, don't they?" I giggled, a little embarrassed. I think she sensed that embarrassment. She said, "Hey, take a moment and come out and meet my kids and my grandkids." It was her sense of community, her understanding, and her care for the people who make theater that I'll always carry with me. Happy birthday, Zelda. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you.
Thank you, Bill and Rich and Laura and Raymond. So the tenure of an artistic director can be short, it can be long. Zelda's was one of the longest and most impressive in the annals of American history, but she found herself in Washington, D.C., surely a complicated city then as now, and was also very socially motivated, as we could see from the SDC discussion. Sort of wondering what you thought were some of her tougher moments in terms of that you came across in terms of her tenure, because I think trying to integrate the Arena Repertory Company in '68, I think was an experiment that had its blessings, but also I think some tremendous wounds, both for her and the company and the community. But I'm wondering why you thought, if you had any insight about why she felt she needed to tackle such a huge issue at Arena.
I think that's two things. One is Zelda had a great sense of location and place where she was. This is something that it moves me about Nicole Salter's foreword to the Long Revolution. Nicole is a alum of this program. She's in a play now in DC, can't be here. So that sense of like where you are in the world was so important to her. And I think that sense that even when you are in the theater, you are also in the world and out in the world. And that world was a segregated DC that she integrated the theater for the first time. She always seemed to know that she didn't go far enough. Who was it? Laura was talking about it. Not enough money, not enough anything with Zelda, not enough connection to the community, not enough connection to the place. And so those multiple attempts, first to integrate the company, then to integrate the company better and integrate the, diversify the offerings, the program, and then 20 years later, from sort of stem to stern to integrate the company, which for her, it seems to me, because she lived in DC, it was very much black and white when she thought about diversification or integration. So she was a woman of her time, but also of her place, and also of that hunger to sort of meet the world.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little, in 1967, of course, Arena produced The Great White Hope, 60 actors, the majority of them Black. And at the same time, because James Earl Jones was there in residence, they did Alfred Fugard's Blood Knot. And she wrote about how exhilarating it was, the audiences in the theater, that for the first time were not just all white, or nearly so. And she wanted that energy. She said
vitality was right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She said this is a paraphrase. She said an all-white audience in this city is a version of Disneyland. And I think she was really heartbroken. Several people talked about this. You did actually as well, about the fact that she always felt that attempt in 1968 to have a truly multicultural company, she felt failed for a variety of reasons. There's no one reason, but she really took that to heart, and it took her 20 years to make another attempt, a real attempt.
Great. I want to welcome to the stage three colleagues I was lucky enough to work with at Arena Stage: Tazwell Thompson, Willa Taylor, and Alan Lee Hughes.
The first play that I directed at Arena was a musical, Abyssinia. Zelda was after me. She followed me and came up to the Goodspeed Opera House, where I was directing the first production of the season. I remember we had a meeting in her office, and she said, "I have plans, and I have some ideas, and I want you to work with me on them. This was the way to get you here." Within a year, I was directing Caucasian Chalk Circle and trying to cast it. Zelda came to all the callbacks. She was always on top of casting, no matter who the director was. The drag performer Ethel Eichelberger came in for the role of the storyteller. He came in with his accordion and he did an incredible audition, and I loved him. He left and I said, "Zell." She stood up and she said, "Oh, I don't know. I just can't. I don't think I can do this. I know you like him. Oh. You know how important this play is to me. And the role is so key and so central. And she was walking around and she was literally twisting herself. Oh. Giving birth is so difficult and so rewarding. But casting a play, that's really hard. I'm just not there yet. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm so sorry, Taz. And before she could say anything more, there was a knock on the door. And Ethel pokes his head in and said, "Is it all right if I come in?" Zelda was still standing there twisting in the middle of this big room. "I won't keep you. I know there are people waiting to come in, but I just had to come back. Are you really Zelda Fichandler?" "Yes. My driver's license says I am." "Why?" "I just heard so many things about you. You know, when I first started out, when I was in school, I heard about Zelda Fichandler achieved this and accomplished that. And I was just expecting you to be so much older. But look at you. You're wearing ruby earrings and that ruby necklace and your red shoes that complement them. And you're just so fashion-wise and so stylish. And you're like the fountain of youth. You've got to tell us your secret. That's all. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for the American theater. He walks out, closes the door, and before the door even slams, Zelda turns to me and says, hire him. Sometime after that, I was in Zelda's office and I said, Zel, I need to talk to you about something. Prior to coming to Arena, but even before I was there, I had a job every now and then outside of Arena. You know, wherever I go, I'm the only person in the room who's Black. It's everywhere. I'm in a production meeting, or I'm in auditions, or I'm just asked to speak to the board of trustees at these theaters. Yes, I know. What do you think we should do? Let's continue to talk about this because something must be done. The woman at the switchboard was Black, the men downstairs in security was Black, but there was no one in costumes. There was no one in props. There was no one in scenery, none of that. So we talked about it. We brought in Willa Taylor.
I got to Arena a little before Taz did, when Arena was hosting the non-traditional casting symposium and needed stage managers of color. Then Susan White, who was the resident sound designer there, needed an assistant. So I was ready at Arena doing that when Zelda started having these conversations about creating a pipeline for people of color, especially in directing, designing, and administration.
We had this idea that in every department, there would be a person of color who would come in for a couple of months and they would be paid. There'd be an assistant director for every director that came in, someone working in the scene shop for props, for painting, lighting, development, marketing, everywhere.
This is the thing that has stuck with me my entire career. I remember Zelda's insistence that we make the program and then find the funding, as opposed to finding the funding and making the program. We were going to go down this road and she would figure out how to make that happen. The other thing I remember is how insistent she was that we be aggressive about it, that we not sit back and wait for people to apply. We would not just put out a call for applications and see what we got. It was going to be my job to go out and find people and bring them into the theater. She really insisted on building travel money into the budget.
Talented members of minorities don't emerge because they see no place for themselves, she wrote. There's no place for them because they haven't emerged.
There were some staff who were just not down with this in any way. Some people, I think, felt threatened for their jobs, not specifically for their jobs at Arena, but what it would mean bringing all of these people and people of color into the field. Other people, as much as they believed in Zelda, did not necessarily believe in a program like that for people of color. But part of what I really loved about her was that that was not going to stop her. And she made it clear that we were moving forward with this. And either you got on board or you got out. That's part of what I think made Zelda Zelda. She knew that she was on the right side of history for this, regardless of the kind of pushback that she was gonna get.
It's named after Allen Lee Hughes because he came up through the ranks from hanging lights.
It was announced to me 15 minutes before it was announced to the press.
Zelda knew that Alan would be reticent about being honored in that way. He's incredibly shy, as you can see, and particularly shy about his accomplishments. She really wanted to honor him and knew that if she had said, "I want to honor you in this way," he'd say no. He would give remarks in those first couple of years to all of the fellows in the classes and really talk to them, not so much about his career, but about what it meant to be a designer in the theater. He inspired a lot of people, and he was very, very approachable as well. When he was in the building, he was checking in on the fellows and making sure that things were going well. When Tazewell was there, because he was directing at other places as well, he came and talked to them in the same way that Zelda did, about their responsibility to the field and to the people coming behind them.
The idea of the fellowships was that whites learned by coming in as interns, often working for free, learning the ropes, and eventually working in those theaters or in other theaters. And the idea was for minorities to get the same training as whites did.
It was such a unique opportunity that she created because it was so much more than an internship or an apprenticeship. The kind of mentoring that you got as a Hughes Fellow, I have never seen duplicated in any place that I've ever been before or since. Zelda took a personal responsibility for all that made time in her crazy, ridiculous schedule to meet with each one of them at least a couple of times during their tenure. That in itself was worth the price of admission. To have a one-on-one with Zelda, Zelda understood it could speak to the theater as world making, as you've heard here tonight, and world shaping in ways that people were not talking about theater at that time and are not talking about now. It always made you feel like you were not just working at the theater, but you had enlisted in a cause to change the world.
I'm not really involved with it, except to occasionally say, raise the pay. But I'm very proud of having my name on something that has trained so many people, over 700, so many that are contributing to the American theater and making a living in it.
Zelda shaped me and formed me and informed me and taught me the power of theater, the power of the spoken word on stage, the power of communal listening and attending and watching and being drawn in together as a group, hearing the same thing at the same time. When I'm in rehearsals or I'm writing something, she's there. She was that influential and that instrumental in my life. I was once asked, what were your influences? I said, there are two words, Zelda Fichandler. She meant everything to me. She touched my life so deeply and completely. I wouldn't be who I am without her. I am Victor Williams.
This all started around 1992. Zelda was making an effort to bring new African-American work to the grad acting program. There was a new play they were developing called Yellow Moon Rising. The idea was great and sort of progressive, but ultimately the text was a slave play. It was the slave owners, the slaves, a good portion of the third-year class was in it, white students as well. It was my first year there, and in your first year, you run lights or sounds for particular shows. I'm doing lights on this show with another Black student, and it was very hard to watch it every night. It was like, I don't want to be here at this school playing slave. We're frustrated with playing maids and servants, and now this is the Black project, and we're playing slaves. It was like, the hell. I felt the need eventually to approach Zelda about it, so I went to her office. It started very much like, oh, I have an open door policy. We can talk about it. But it got very tense. It was contentious. I expressed my frustration around this play being done, and it escalated. We were arguing back and forth. It ended with her saying, well, if you don't like it, maybe you don't need to be here. It devastated me. In hindsight, I realized she pulled the artistic director card. It deflated me. The conversation was over and I walked out. And I was disheartened, frustrated. I told my mother about what happened with me and Zelda, and my mother said, we don't want you to get kicked out of school. She basically told me to stand down, and I was mad at my mom. I held that with me for a while. And finally, there was this all-school meeting. Zelda's there talking about the importance of doing certain work. She's going on, and I'm just boiling, getting angry. The other student who was in the lighting booth with me knew about me confronting with Zelda, and she was also frustrated that Zelda was not having any real conversation, we felt, about why that play, what the hell is happening with this program. That student kept nudging me, going to say something. Finally, I was like, fine. I had enough. And I stood up in the middle of her talking and I said, you know what? Just cut the rhetoric. I can't remember the specifics, but I went on, like, we're here, we're tired of playing these parts, we're tired of playing these roles, and you're talking about being progressive, or whatever the phrase was at the time. But you give us this slave play, and it's not acceptable. I went on, not yelling, but full voice and expressive. She took it in. I don't recall her saying anything. And it opened up a lot of dialogue within that entire room. All of a sudden, the students are going back and forth. I remember 2 students were arguing. I think one accused her class of being racially insensitive, and another student was like, what the fuck are you talking about? We walked out of that all-school meeting, though, feeling like, okay, we all laid it out, and we're actually better for it. Later, Zelda walked by me, and I can't remember word for word what she said, but it was essentially, how dare you cut me off? So we had the standoff. And pretty much for the remainder of my time at NYU, we had a very tense relationship. Ron Van Loo came to me and said, write a list of all the plays that you want to do that you think we should put in the season next year. I went and spoke to the other Black students in the class. We came up with a list, and we ultimately wound up doing the piano lesson, which was like the first Black production. Like all Black cast, Black playwright, Black director, and it was amazing. It was such a memorable production. I think the school itself was sort of like, oh, this is the experience you want. Oh my God, this is phenomenal. I think everyone understood the necessity of doing more Black plays and thereby getting more Black actors into the school. So a few years out of school, I stopped by grad acting. I hadn't seen Zelda at all. And I'm in the hallway, and she says, hey, how are your knees? They're okay. Yeah, I know you had a lot of problems with your knees while you were in school. I'm having a problem with my hip right now, and those things are just awful. I hope you can get that taken care of. Make sure you take care of yourself. And I was like, okay, I mean, in my mind, we're supposed to be duking it out. After that, my dad died. And after that, my dad died, and she sent me this letter. And it was like, oh, this is what people do. This is what people should do. They should argue and fight and state their positions. And it's okay. I still think that play was an awful choice. But the thing about her, which I think about now a lot in the world we live in today, is that there is no perfect first time around. She made the efforts to give the school and the students there what she thought they wanted. And she didn't understand, and she made a mistake. Then she made a better choice moving forward in terms of the plays that were picked, in terms of helping to bring more diversity to the student body. She was always proactive and assertive and trying to be at the forefront. Zelda always tried to do things, and I think the reality is sometimes she hit the nail on the head and sometimes she didn't. And with me, she got defensive. She's human. You're not always going to be on the same page in terms of how you get there, but you're still on the same path.
So just quickly, this transition into graduate acting. Zelda could have been an artistic director and been legendary. She didn't have to work with students. She started, I think at Boston University, and then gradually took over the graduate acting program. Why do you think she had to do that?
She discovered, I think, Tazewell, there's a quote from Tazewell. She said, "This is the most exciting thing I've ever done. This is me." I think she felt as a teacher, there was something that just really resonated with her, with the students, with the young people coming up.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, this is to the side of that, but I was at New Dramatists in 1996, and we literally had a repeating conversation, which was, what's going on at NYU Grad Acting? Because suddenly everyone we saw coming out of here was like, we kept calling them back for more things. It was just such and I know this had started earlier, but it was an incredible moment. And my sense from her writing is just that when it came around, first of all, she was a teacher. I mean, I think that's runs through everything we've heard tonight, but also the actor was really the center of the thing for her. And maybe it was a long way around, but the acting company, it started with Arena. And here it was each and every one of you to become the fullest of yourself and to do this thing. So yes, she was a great literary mind. Yes, she thought about directing a lot, but it always came down to the actors. So this was perfect.
Well, if it was a mission for Zelda to be chair of an acting program, the mission statement came loud and clear right after Labor Day every year. And I'd like to welcome Cherise Boothe.
Hello, my name is Cherise Boothe. I was at NYU from 99 to 2002, and I count myself extremely blessed to have been there during the time that Zelda was still there. I'm going to read an all-school meeting address that she wrote on September 7th, 2001. Let me speak about the relationship among playwright, actor, and audience. For theater is rooted in that triangle. The theater is a public space, and playwrights are essentially social artists. The forms they use to tell their stories are to a large degree culturally determined.
In whatever form the playwright casts her story, as she bends over the accumulating pages in her study, there is always the imagined presence of an audience. She never forgets that everything she writes will be tested in public, in front of living, breathing people who will believe or not, laugh or not, applaud or, God forbid, sit on their hands. The playwright has other expectations as well. There will be actors who by opening night will hopefully have uncovered the feelings, actions, and meanings for which the words are clues. Through the instrument of their bodies, voices, and intelligence, and by means of the thoughts and feelings they loan to the characters they play, they will make the blueprint of the script into a palpable, living thing. August Wilson says, "When I was writing Joe Turner's Come and Gone, I realized that someone was going to stand up on stage and say the words, whatever the hell they were. That's when I realized I had a responsibility to the words. Couldn't have the character say any old thing. There couldn't be any mistakes." Society is in the basement with him, in his mind's eye, waiting to see what he has to show them this time. This expectant audience, in various guises, not all of them benevolent, pass through his dreams and keep him on the edge as he moves through his working days. The public has gifts of its own to contribute to the theatrical event. First among these contributions is empathy, the ability to identify with the joys and pains of others. Because one crying infant in a hospital nursery can trigger the whole pack into loud wails, the act of theater is possible. Along with empathy, the audience gives to the theater its imaginative power. All of us are born artists. We all can, when young, see things that aren't there, believe in what logic defies, a tooth fairy or magical friend. Any child can crawl under a table and presto, it's a cave. Some grown-ups hold on to this capacity for an enchantment. A few chairs become a room if the actors use them as one. In Henry V, the prologue invites them to think when we talk of horses that you see them, printing their proud hooves in the receiving earth. Their silent response, yes, we can do that. We want to do that. Let's do that. The audience also gives us its attention, the most precious gift of all. To attend is a form of prayer, a form of loving. Because theater shows us people like ourselves acting out stories, because we attend and are moved, while others in turn are moved by our being moved, it's quite possible for a fire of emotional contagion to break out in the theater. Theater has a terrible and wonderful power to reach people's minds through their hearts and maybe change them. Who knows what exquisite mischief can come from a changed mind? Theater is an art of experience. The playwright in her study sets her experience down in words, a kind of code. The actors break that code, and we enter their experience and understand, so that we see into, and having seen into the experience of life itself and into the experience of others, we are changed and will never be the same.
So, if NYU, if Zelda helped achieve a crown in acting for NYU Graduate Acting, here are three of the crown jewels: Ron Van Loo, Deborah Hecht, and Janet Zarin.
It was like church. Even if you don't go to church, it was like church.
Its purpose was to recharge your batteries to full, so you really wanted to just get in that room and make art. Because it was important to make art, because the world needed you to make art, and because you were an artist. Zelda knew how to get to artists. She knew how to get inside of them. So even if you got tired and cynical, it still got to you somehow.
Zelda always had the ability to bring something personal and something research that had touched her, that reconnected her with what she did and why she did it, with the goal. It wasn't just setting a bar in terms of technique. It was setting a bar in terms of the size of your purpose in the world, the path you've been given to do that, and to at least see that, whether you're able to act on it or not.
At one point, Zelda came to me and said, I think you need to direct. I don't understand why she said that. I never expressed that I wanted to direct. I never mentioned directing. The first two plays I directed were As You Like It and then The Winter's Tale. I was screaming, why did she make me do this? I don't know what I'm doing. She's done this a couple of times to me, where it felt like she had been keeping an eye on me, and a year, 2 years, 3 years later, she would say something that would reveal to me what she saw in me. Those moments actually changed my life.
She told me she wanted to be two things that she never turned out to be. One was a psychiatrist, and the other was an actor. She was told by her teacher that her acting was too controlled and too technical, so she couldn't be an actor. But I always thought she was an amateur psychiatrist. Because when we would audition people, some of those that she would pick, I just knew they were going to be her patients. And they were. She would take a very special interest during their 3 years there. Indirectly, it helped them as actors, because if she helped them overcome things that were in their way of being able to fully offer themselves in their work, then that was a benefit. But I also think she just liked doing it. She liked having sessions.
She made me fire somebody once. It was a job she should have done. It was a brilliant voice person who unfortunately was a terrible teacher. And Zelda said this person had to go. Zelda wouldn't fire her. I had to. And I remember being so irritated, thinking, this is your job, not mine. She talked about firing people, what a hard thing it was, and how much she hated it. No kidding. I remember when I first met her, I was sitting down, this was doing auditions up at Yale years ago, and I was sitting down and there was something intimidating or a little bit distant about her. And I also thought she was tall, but she actually had an enormously warm heart. And I think some of the times when she may have seemed a little standoffish was for her own self-protection.
I was always fascinated by her wardrobe, as was the entire school. Honestly, I found myself dressing better when she came. I think there's a kind of power in that sense of style, in walking to a room done and knowing that you look good, that you made an impression. I only saw her wear jeans once ever, and it was on a weekend, and they were pressed jeans.
There were a number of times I had dinner with her at that restaurant across from her apartment, right on Washington Square. She would often have dinner by herself at this restaurant, and I realized, or I felt later, that she was lonely. Her group of friends and her sister were in DC, You come to a place for work and your work colleagues become your friends, but it's a different kind of friendship.
She would ask me to accompany her to things. I was her escort for a lot of affairs. She didn't seem to have any other life or attachment going on, except work. Even on the weekends, she'd be in her office. Nobody's there, there's no rehearsal, there's nothing going on, but she's in her office. She's writing, or she's reading, or she's planning. I found that poignant.
You earned her giggly side. She was a giggler. And she would break into funny songs all the time. You'd be talking to her and she'd say something like, I think we should do that play because there's that beautiful garden scene that no one seems to get right. Tiptoe through the tulips. And she'd start singing a 1930s song. Sometimes we couldn't stop laughing on the phone. We'd start saying, my stomach hurts, stop, stop, stop. But there was not a middle ground. There was that heart and there was the mother, but then there was a businesswoman. She could be my mother and she could go, oh, darling, and hug me and this and that. And then when it came to my contract, it was like, ooh, damn. I'm the boss now and I keep separate worlds.
Something would be said that was funny, and she'd do this exploding cackle that would just come out. It was not all the time, but when it did, it was just so free and hilarious. And also, I never saw her do this with a man in the room, but I know she did this with a couple of us women. I think you were in the room once. She would get really silly. I mean, really silly. There were a couple of times where we would leave her and be like, is she okay? It would be so extreme. She'd just get wacky.
Her fibromyalgia got so bad that she really couldn't walk well. She couldn't get around well enough to navigate going uptown to the dentist, so I would start driving her places. And one time we were driving up Madison Avenue, and all of a sudden she said to me, Janet, you know you are a very good driver. You have a talent for this. You look, you breathe, you scope out the situation, you're steady, you're calm, you take everything in. Very good. And the way she said it, I knew she wasn't talking only about driving. She was giving me a clue as to how to be in the world. She was my mentor in so many different ways. She had the art of dropping a penny in front of you very gently, or maybe a feather floats to the ground. Sometimes I'd look at people and I'd go, did you just get what she gave you? Because she'd give them in a non-direct way. She didn't want to presume that she was trying to tell you what to do, but she was a master at understanding people, which is why she loved theater so much, because she wanted to see the core of the characters. The only reason she stopped was that she was managing so much pain. She probably should have left about 2 years earlier, maybe 3, but as she said, work is my life. She just couldn't imagine not working, and she couldn't imagine not being involved in these students' lives.
At the beginning of each school year, Zelda would give a speech and for those of us who've been there for a while, sometimes we would be there just, well, I'll speak for myself, just out of obligation. And you always felt that I would like just 3 more days before I had to come back to school and get into it. But as she went on, each time, each year, each beginning, she was pointing the way forward toward our common goal. Students, teachers, everyone. It was setting a bar, oh, wrong line. Our common goal was to make theater that is the corporeal reflection of the soul of a society. She really thought big in terms of the purpose of theater.
During the last couple of years that she was there, we were, if not friends, we were more comfortable with each other's presence. I would still come and see the shows, or I would come to events, and she was frail. It was like sitting in that chair, she was marshaling all the energy she was going to need to deliver this speech. And then she would get up a few steps and go to the podium and give a speech, and she was fantastic. When she hit the podium, it was Zelda at her best.
We have a brief video from Karen Pittman, who couldn't be here this evening, one of her students at Graduate Acting.
When I auditioned for the program, I was 4.5 months pregnant. I went into the very first audition. I passed denied career in the hall. She was graduating that year, and she was like, whoa. I was sure I was hiding my pregnancy. I was like, no one could tell. Janice Zara said, you know, Karen, you're very talented. And if you want to come back tonight, you can meet the head of the program and audition again. But I will tell you, I think this is going to be hard. I'm not sure you're ready. I came back in the evening and I met Zelda Fichandler. I was doing a Susan Laurie Parks audition from Venus, a monologue from that play. I'm rolling around on the floor, almost 5 months pregnant, and Zelda says, Karen, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, okay. She said, I have girls in the program who can't even keep their boyfriends. How are you going to raise a child? How are you going to do this? And I said, if I'm good enough to call back, then it shouldn't matter if I'm pregnant or not. I've got support for my child. I have a husband, I have a support network. And if I get into the program, I can do the work. And she was like, And Janet was very quietly writing things down and keeping out from under her eyelids. I left there thinking, well, left it all on the table, babe. 2 months later, I heard from them. We'd like for you to come back in. Where are you in your pregnancy? I said, I'm about 7 months in now. I came back and all the activities that they require you to do at the callback, circus and everything, Zelda sat watching me from a chair. Don't let Karen do that. Karen can't do that one. Well, I got into the program. I told Zelda I wasn't sure I could afford it. And she and being Mary Campbell found money. She sent me a letter asking how I was doing back when we sent letters. She sent another after my son Jacob was born. A beautiful letter, congratulating me. This is the most important time of your life. And enjoy your child. I'll see you when you get to the program. Got to the program, and they made a room for me to breastfeed in my first semester there.
So it was a surprise that Zelda ended up being as nurturing as she was, because she had a very masculine characteristic that I think fathers have. Moms are like, come on in, get a little piece of pie. What, you want a glass of milk with that? Can I get you some collard greens, macaroni and cheese, candy, and some steak and cornbread with that? Some iced tea? Whereas fathers are like, go on out there, you can do it. Get on out there, swim in the deep end, you can do it, go do it, go, go, go. And that was Zelda.
It's all gotten to me a little bit. I'm Maggie Siff, and I'm reading from a speech she wrote called The Long Revolution from 1978. I have a snatch of wisdom, a nugget, a pearl even, stumbled upon and shining. We must hang on to our despair. Without despair, everything is hopeless. In the past 20 years, longer for me and a few others, we have made a revolution. And while revolution can pulse with the joy of change and ride on the back of optimism and imagined goods, the energy for them comes from despair. Despair creates anger, and anger creates energy, and energy turns things around. The dictionary offers up a number of definitions of revolution. I focus on two. A sudden, radical, or complete change, as in revolution in thought, and a basic reorientation and reorganization, as in revolution in technology. We engaged in both, a revolution in thought and a revolution not in technology, but in methodology, near enough. It was despair that transformed one into the other. Of course, everything started with thought. If the very fabric of our thought had not changed, we would not have been able to change reality. The new perception of theater that came to us had many facets and implications, and each of us emphasized something different. But the basic synapse in our thinking was simple, that theater should stop serving the function of making money, for which it has never been and never will be suited, and start serving the process of living, its revelation and shaping, for which theater is uniquely suited, for which it indeed exists. The new thought was that theater should be restored to itself as a form of art. What is an art form? When I say we wanted our theater to be about art, what exactly do I mean? First of all, I mean that art is something of its own and not something of something else. It is not education. It is not social betterment. It is not about civic pride or better international relations or group therapy. It is not merit goods. It is not goods of any kind. It may serve many worthy ends, and indeed it does, all of the above and more, but it serves these ends tangentially as spillover from itself. Art is not created for these ends and does not exist for them. It is self-serving and lonely, self-standing and fragile, self-defined and searching. It is what it is. We said we wanted theater as an art form. When the despair set in, all we had was Broadway, an industry built upon one-shotness, mammon-mindedness, crisis and hysteria, lest all be lost on a single throw of the dice. We needed quietude of spirit and continuity, the freedom to fail and still go on working. We had actors stuck in long-running hits and stagnating, or not working with limited outlets. Architectural monotony, that is, that would enable us to insert meaning and beauty into our culture so that people could reach out and touch it simply and directly. Despite hazards and harassments, we have in our various ways done just that. Our greatest achievement has been to decentralize and make popular, that is, part of the lives of people all over the country, the art of the theater. It is a miracle of sorts. For not only did we have to construct the method to carry our idea, but we had to train an audience to know that they wanted to have what we wanted to give them. And that was not an easy struggle. It still goes on. The dictionary labels another meaning of revolution obsolete. A winding or curving form or course, twist, bend. It may be obsolete, but it rings a bell. Our course will continue to be a winding one, a great suppleness, as in twist, bend, will be demanded of us for years to come. Sweet are the uses of despair. Without despair, everything is hopeless. And there is still so much to be done.
At the end of the 20th century, Zelda directed Uncle Vanya at Arena Stage, and I want to welcome the cast from that production to the stage. Quite extraordinary that they all came together. The assistant director on the show, Lisa Rothby, Charlie Giannis, Tom Hewitt, and Angel Desai.
I hadn't worked at the Arena in 10 years, not since doing Harpo in Doug's production of The Coconuts, and nor seen Zelda. And then Levy asked me to come back and do Ghosts, and it was the day before the first rehearsal, and I flew into Washington and took a taxi to the big apartment building that was actor housing across the street, and the young person who welcomed me and helped me find my apartment, the parking lot was full, and I think it was a Monday. And they said, oh, it's Tom Fichandler's memorial service. So I quickly put on a decent shirt and freshened up a bit, and I went over and found my way to where Zelda was talking to people afterwards and to offer my condolences. And I went over to and said hello, and almost immediately she said, Charlie, you know, Doug Wager wants me to come back next season and do Uncle Vanya. Would you come and do that with me? You always had a practical eye. She was inspiring, and yet she was very down to the nitty-gritty.
I did not get any agents to sign me out of school. I had no representation. But that fall, I got to go in and audition for Uncle Vanya because of the casting director. And then Zelda cast me. And it was my first equity job, and I felt saved. That job made me feel like, oh my God, I think I won't drown after all. And I remember that everything was so new. I felt I had very little to bring to the table, but because of that gentleman, Mr. Ron Van Loo, sitting right there, I felt lucky that at least I had a knowledge of Sonia, because we'd done it in my second year, from the inside. And because these other actors were clearly such veterans, still feel that, it was my first time doing scenes with people who are the ages that the characters were supposed to be. And I was very green. And oh boy. So the first Ostrov, she fired him. I think she felt it wasn't a good fit. I think we all kind of recognized it. It wasn't working. He was a good looking guy, good actor, smart person, everything, but there was something missing. But it was 3 weeks in. We had 1 week before tech. She let him go, and Tom Hewitt came in to rescue us. And so, less than 10 days. And then it was, it was amazing. When you have the right people in the parts, 80% of the work is done. Oh, I said this before I knew you were gonna be here, Tom. Thank God Tom is a smart actor as well as a gorgeous one. He was perfect and he nailed it.
It was stressful. I am not a fast actor. I don't learn lines quickly. It's all got to be part of the physicality. And it was really just about learning it and getting it up. And thanks in no small part to Lisa Rothy, who spent several nights with me in company housing until the wee hours of the morning. I remember a table conversation with Zelda early on, and she asked me, why do you think he's doing this now in this scene? And I said, I need a minute, Zelda. I haven't really read the play yet. There already was a structure that I had to fit into, and boy, Zelda was generous and so kind. And after I learned it, it was incredibly rewarding to be in, just so solid, and it looked so beautiful. And I remember loving running that show. Charlie Giannis, of course, was exceptional. Charlie and I had worked together at Arena Stage together prior to that too.
We had done Algernon and Jack together in The Importance of Being Earnest on the Arena Stage in 82, 83. And I remember standing in the wings one day with Tom, waiting for an entrance as Vanya and Ostrov. And I said, you know, this is exactly where we were standing 15 years ago doing Jack and Algie.
When I got out of school, NYU Grad Acting, Zelda called me and she said, I'm starting a directing program for alumni of this program, and I think you should do it. And like, Janet, I was like, what? It hadn't really occurred to me, but I pretty much immediately said, yes, okay, yes. It was the mid-90s. I had just come out of the closet and the world wasn't very kind. And that offering was the greatest gift she could have given me. It changed my life. After I graduated from the directing program, she invited me to Arena Stage, where I assisted her on Uncle Vanya. And it was revolutionary for me because she really trusted the actors. She really encouraged them to play. She did not micromanage. She was never, from my perspective anyway, like, do this, ever. She asked a lot of questions. She laughed a lot. There was so much humor and so much delight in that room. She was so calm and relaxed, and she seemed so happy. I think she was delighted not to be running Arena.
Oh, and I remember she was very happy. She was happier than I'd remembered her at school. She was sitting there with a pillow under her leg. She had just had surgery and she wasn't able to move easily, but she was singing songs. She would say a phrase and then it would remind her of a song lyric, like Janet was saying, and she'd start singing the song. And she had these little moments that she got really excited, even with her cane. She'd come down to the set and walk around and say, this happens. It energized her to be directing us. She was clearly at home.
So Zelda took me under her wing and she introduced me to storytelling from a different perspective. I'd never been in the round in an arena. And of course she did it so deftly and easily. It was like breathing for her. She introduced me to translator Carol Rockamora. And watching these women together, these powerful women in their flowing things and their jewelry, remember those rings, and that intellect owning the space in such an organic, beautiful way. And it was like, oh, this can happen. It doesn't have to be dictatorial at all. And I actually felt very loving.
She was one of the most inspiring speakers I ever heard. Whereas you were with her working in the rehearsal hall, and she was more just nuts and bolts and very down to earth and a wicked sense of humor. She loved jokes about psychiatrists. She had a wonderful raucous laugh, and if you could tickle her funny bone, it was very rewarding.
We went out to dinner many nights after rehearsal and we had these deep conversations. We talked about what it meant to be gay in the world we were living in the mid-90s and how the world might understand, but that it wouldn't always be this way. And she supported who I was. Huge part of the conversation was she asked me questions about what it was like for me as a young woman to be gay and my relationship with my parents. She shared with me that she had a son who was gay. I don't know the whole picture. It's not like Zelda shared a whole bunch of personal things with me all the time about her life, but it was like she was trying to work it out with me. One of the things she talked about also was the opportunity cost of running, of starting a theater, of founding a regional theater, and being at the beginning of that whole conversation, and her family. She missed out. She knew this. All of this, we were standing in the theater in the arena. All of this came at a cost. She was grappling with it.
Leave me alone. With the greatest of pleasure. Should have left a long time ago, but I repeat, I'm not leaving until you give me back what you've taken from me.
I took nothing from you.
I mean it. Don't keep me waiting. I should have been gone a long time ago.
I took nothing from you.
Really? All right, we'll wait a bit and then forgive me. We'll have to use force. We'll tie you up and take it from you. I am saying this in all seriousness.
Whatever. A fool. Oh, to shoot twice and miss both times. I shall never forgive myself.
In order to shoot so badly, you should have aimed for your own head.
Strange. I have attempted murder and they haven't come to arrest me yet. They haven't put me on trial. They must think I'm mad.
No, you're not mad. You're just an eccentric, laughing stock. You know, I used to think that eccentrics weren't normal, but now I'm of the mind that the normal state of man is to be eccentric. You are completely normal.
If you only knew how ashamed I am. No pain, no agony, nothing can compare to this feeling of shame. It's unbearable. What can I do? What can I do?
Nothing.
Give me something. Oh my God. I'm 47 years old. Say I live to 60. That means I still have 13 years to go. An eternity. How can I live through 13 more years? What will I do? How will I fill them? Oh, think of it. Think of how it might be to live the rest of your life in some new way. To wake up one calm, clear morning and feel that your life has started anew. That all the past has been forgotten, scattered like smoke, to start a new life. Describe it for me. With what?
What are you talking about? What new life? Our situation, yours and mine, it's hopeless.
It is.
I'm convinced of it.
Give me something. It hurts so.
Stop it! Those who will live after us 100, 200 years will despise us because we've lived our lives so stupidly, so unspeakably. Perhaps they will find their way to happiness. But you and I, we have only one hope. Here it is. The hope that while we're sleeping in our graves, that we are visited by dreams. Sometimes even happy ones. Oh. Yes, my friend. Once upon a time in this district, there lived two decent, honest, intelligent men. Only two, you and I. About 10 years or so of this contemptible country life, this Philistine life, it has dragged us down. It's poisoned us, our blood with its putrid fumes, and we become vulgar. Like everybody else. John, look now. See what you've done again? You've charmed me with all this talk. Now give me back what you took from me.
I took nothing from you.
You took a bottle of morphine from my medicine bag.
Leave me alone.
Sergei Alexandrovna, no. Your uncle took a bottle of morphine from my bag and he won't give it back. Now tell him that it is not wise in the end And besides, I've run out of time. I must be on my way.
Uncle Vanya, you took morphine?
He did, I'm sure of it.
Oh, give it back. Why are you trying to frighten us? Give it back, Uncle Vanya. I may be just as unhappy as you, but I don't despair. I endure. I shall endure, and until my life is over, and so shall you. Give it back. Good, kind, darling uncle, you're so good. Have patience, Uncle Vanya. Have patience.
Go on, take it. Take it. But we must get to work. As soon as possible, we must do something. I can't bear it. I can't bear it.
Yes, work, yes. As soon as they're off, we'll get to work. We neglected everything.
Oh, now I can be on my way. My trace horse started to limp yesterday, I noticed. Got to reshoe him. Stop at the blacksmith's. Can't let it go.
He's gone.
My child. It hurts so much. Oh, if only you knew how much.
What can we do? We must live. We shall live, Uncle Vanya. We shall live through the endless, endless row of days. The long evenings. We shall patiently bear the ordeals that fate has in store for us. We shall toil for others now and in our old age. We shall know no rest. And when our hour comes, we shall die humbly. And there beyond the grave, we shall say that we've suffered, that we've wept, that life was bitter. And God will take pity on us. And you and I, Uncle, darling Uncle, we shall see a radiant life, a beautiful, blissful life. We shall rejoice, and we shall look back on our present unhappiness with tenderness, with a smile, and we shall rest. I believe it, Uncle Vanya. I believe it so fervently, passionately. We shall rest. We shall rest.
The best Uncle Vanya in New York today. We're just some people we want to acknowledge as we come towards the end. I do want to acknowledge two artistic directors at Arena Stage. Douglas C. Wager is here with us tonight. And the current recently announced director of Arena Stage, Hana Sharif. Hana. So we thank them and all of you who came from far and away to be here tonight. And I know that Mary and Todd have some people they want to thank.
I just want to thank Hal and Mark Fichandler who were here tonight with us, and their Aunt Joyce, Zelda's younger sister, who is watching either the live stream or the recording from Washington, D.C. and is so excited that her sister is getting this kind of a celebration. I want to thank, of course, Larry and Anne for not only putting this event together, but Anne for helping me find people. NYU people, Larry for writing the Arena Adventure, giving the book a close reading. I want to thank Laura Penn. I already have. Thank you again. Todd for being a companion in Zellland, as he's put it. I want to thank my husband, Eric, my friend Molly Regan for helping me reading the book and giving me notes. Rora Rodwin who helped me in the final stages of it. And I really want to thank Jane Alexander, who was a champion of this book right from the get-go, agreed to write the foreword before she read the book. And this all has to do with how much she loves and reveres Zelda. And you're an inspiration, Jane. Thank you.
So everybody Mary said, we've already gone on longer than Zelda was at Arena, so I was so determined in my acknowledgements in the book not to miss anyone who was part of Zelda's world that I failed to thank my wife, who is right there, who really got me through. So priorities, Todd. So yeah, so many people, everybody. I want to thank especially Larry for this tonight, and NYU Grad Acting, all the folks from SDC, all the folks from TCG. Andy Boyd is here, Rob Kent, Aaron Salvia is here, Kathy Silva could not be here, Terry Nemeth, who got this party started, though he could not be here. And then I just want to, all the other people are thanked in the book, so you can see that. But people who introduced me to Zelda over the years included Arthur Bartow, who couldn't be here tonight at the last minute, Christy Brown, Melissa Kievman, Jim Nicola, Lindy Zesh, Alan Schneider, David Wheeler, and Peter Zeisler, all in memory. So I'm sure I left somebody out, but not Karen.
Thank you, Todd. We're going to take a look at quickly at Awake and Sing. We had already done Awake and Sing at NYU. Ken Washington directed it. My dad grew up in the Bronx in the 1930s, so he talked to the cast. He brought the cast of the NYU production to my parents' house for Passover. They wound up taking our dining room table to use on the set. It was the first time NYU had ever done an Odets, and I think Zelda gradually fell in love with it. So we're going to do a quick mashup of the Arena stage production, which involved Miriam Silverman and Adam Green, and we'll have the Alan Hughes directing fellow, Melissa Crespo, and also the NYU production, Gareth Sachs and Mia Barron.
These are some of Zelda's first rehearsal remarks at Arena, December 19th, 2005. I'm looking at this old photo of my mother, who was probably 5 years old and fresh off the boat. As closely as we can figure, it was taken in 1905, arrived from shtetl life in Lithuania, then part of Russia. She comes with her parents, joined in loveless marriage by arrangement, and lacking the practical skills to make their way. The family will begin the struggle with overtones of despair to stake out its portion of the American dream.
I imagine that my mother Ida is wearing her one good dress, freshly washed and starched to look her best for the photographer. She is a touching little girl. My heart goes out to her, but in the solemn, private expression in her eyes, I think I see intimations of the anxiety, tension, and even hopelessness that will underscore her life. Only 5, she had already experienced oppression, and this experience will be the counterpoint to her life's jokes and joys.
Gazing on this photograph has been part of my research for directing Awake and Sing, helping me recall early memories of my own life in the Depression years of the 30s, deepening my awareness of how people who were to me, Daddy and Mommy, Bubby and Zadie, aunt, uncle, neighbor, classmates, teacher, and friend, were also figures in the third wave of Jewish immigrants to the United States, the greatest mass immigration in history, figures who became integral to every part of American culture.
The sudden catastrophic failure of American business in 1929 struck the Berger family of Odets' play with more force than it did my own, though we felt the change.
Over Bessie Berger, too, hung a host of dangers. Just being alive was dangerous. It was humiliating for the Bergers to be poor, living tightly on a pooled yearly income of under $30,000 in today's dollars. not able to be who they wanted and deserved to be, standing close to the American dream, seeing it and not able to grab the brass ring.
Poverty corrodes the human spirit. Its weight falls most heavily on the wife, mother of the house. Bessie's weapons against poverty are her mop and dust rags. Her house stays neat as a pin, and especially her children, whom she manipulates so their lives will conform to her standards.
My mother's magic word was hame, home. When the world provoked too much anxiety, there was always home to retreat to, home as sanctuary. Home might be contentious for Bessie and her family, a place of cross purposes, criticism, and mostly stifled explosive disappointment, but it is also a safe haven, holding the possibility of laughter and warmth. Love means putting up with and standing up for each other.
The final impact of Awaken Sing comes less from its protest against the horrors of poverty than from the potent spirit of its people as they struggle for life amid petty conditions. By daring to put the lives of these recognizable people on stage, Clifford Odets created the first deeply felt and theatrically achieved realism in the American theater.
Awaken Sing was material that Zelda knew about. She loved the politics. She loved the Jewishness of it. She ate up everything that my dad threw her way, even the color palette of the apartments back in the Bronx in the 1930s. And the group of actors was of her choosing.
She was slowly building the cast, but I think Henny was the one that she couldn't cast. I was trying desperately to get an audition. I wrote a letter to Zelda. She invited me to come and audition for her in her office on the 5th floor of NYU, and she got a really great reader. She asked Adam. I think he was very discreet about our knowing each other. I don't think I'd ever been so nervous. It was just me and Zelda and Adam in her office. I think I started to understand why the role was so hard for her to cast, because we had realized how connected she was to the character, how much she identified with her.
I applied for the Alan Lee Hughes Directing Fellowship, and I was Zelda's assistant director. I actually wrote a paper about Zelda and Arena when I was in college. In my modern theater class, there was a chapter on the beginnings of regional theater. Zelda and the Alley and all of those really influential pioneer women that were in the forefront of it. I was super interested in Zelda. I was drawn to the fact that she was one of the first to integrate the stage. Zelda was not too far out from her hip replacement surgery, and Molly Smith said to me, she needs a ride, you're her chauffeur. And I was like, anything you need. I had the privilege of having extra time with Zelda because I was driving her everywhere. It was an opportunity for me to bond with her. I remember all of the actors being very smitten, just like me. It's like meeting any celebrity. But the thing about Zelda is she's glamorous, but she's also very humble. And I felt at home with her immediately. I didn't feel any pretense. I really got the sense that she was there to do the work. We would be rehearsing and then she'd go into a tangent and it would be story time with Zelda. Everybody would gladly stop what they were doing and just listen. She would talk about her family, she would talk about the play, and it all made sense. Those were the moments where it felt like, oh, I need to pay attention because something magical is happening right now.
I was in that place that I think all actors are when they're first out of their training program. You're still most of the time working too hard. I just remember so many times her being able to give me just that little look and say basically, it's enough. Just to exist and not do anything extra.
So about a week into it, we did another read through of the play, and we're all going at it because we had just done this week of table work and everybody was weeping at the end. And Zelda was like, that's not it. You have to understand this is not about grandstanding. And so we were both a year or two out of grad school and we were feeling it. And so it had to really be something. And after thinking that we were well on our way, I was like, oh, okay, I gotta learn how to act now.
And yet it felt very exploratory. Even though I was obviously intimidated by her because of who she was, I also felt safe to try things.
I think Zelda paid a lot of attention to me because I was so newly out of the NYU grad program. And I remember her working me when I had to listen for the plane at the end that's bringing the mail. And I remember doing that countless times and it was tough, but it also felt like this weird kind of mother-son relationship off stage. And definitely kind of embarrassing, like, Mom, just let me live my own life. So in the middle of tech, Miriam is up on stage doing something and they're adjusting the lights or whatever. And I snuck into the house to watch Zelda and her assistant director, Melissa. They're in the third or fourth row watching and they're kind of whispering. And so I get a little closer, to hear what they're saying, what pearls of wisdom are dropping from Zelda's lips. And they're pointing and I hear Zelda say, she is such a good tuchus. About this one. And I was like, oh yes, yeah. America's legendary director admiring my girlfriend's butt.
The best compliment I've ever had.
I remember bringing my dad down to previews, and when it was over, he said, I have some notes for Mrs. Fichandler. No, you don't, Dad. But you can give them to me. She was recently widowed, and he was recently widowed, and they knew each other back from when I worked in an arena stage. She said, oh, it's so nice to see you, Mr. Maslon. You're looking well. And you're looking very well, very nice yourself, Mrs. Fichandler, if I may say so. At which point I think I lost consciousness. That my dad might wind up dating Zelda. That would have been the ultimate Freudian night. It was a wonderful production, though. It was in her wheelhouse. I think it was a nice way for her to finish off Arena. As Ari Roth said in Mary's book, it was Zelda's warmest work ever. There was almost no barrier between the proscenium and the house. You felt you were just invited into the living room.
Please don't have foolish ideas about the money.
Let's call it a day. Forget it, Mom.
Ralphie, I worked too hard all my years to be treated like dirt. It's no law we should be stuck together like Siamese twins. Summer shoes you didn't have, skates you never had, but I bought a new dress every week. A lover I kept, Mr. Gigolo. Did I ever play a game of cards like Mrs. Marcus? Or was Bessie Berger's children always the cleanest on the block? Here, I'm not only the mother, but also the father. The first 2 years, I worked in a stocking factory for $6 while Myron Berger went to law school. If I didn't worry about the family, who would? On the calendar, it's a different place. But here, without $1, you don't look the world in the eye. Talk from now to next year. This is life in America.
Well, then it's wrong. It don't make sense. If life made you this way, then it's wrong.
Well, maybe you wanted me to give up 20 years ago. Where would you be now? You'll excuse my expression, a bum in the park.
I'm not blaming you, Mom. Sink or swim, I see it, but it cannot stay like this.
My foolish boy.
No, I see every house lousy with lies and hate. He said it, Grandpa. Brooklyn hates the Bronx. Smacked on the nose twice a day. But boys and girls can get ahead like that, Mom. We don't want life printed on dollar bills, Mom.
So go out and change the world if you don't like it.
Yeah, I will. And why? Because life's different in my head. Yeah, give me the earth in 2 hands. I'm strong. There. You hear him? That's the airmail off to Boston. Day and night, he flies away. He's got a job to do. That's us, and it's no time to die.
Mom, what does she know? She's old-fashioned. But I'll tell you a big secret. My whole life, I wanted to go away too. But with children, a woman stays home. A fire burned in my heart too, but now it's too late. I'm no spring chicken. The clock goes and Bessie goes. Only my machinery can't be fixed. Good night.
Why are you crying?
I never cried a day in my life.
You told Sam you love it.
If I'm sore on life, why take it out on him?
You won't forget me till your dying day. I was your first guy. Part of your inside, you won't forget. I wrote my name on you, indelible ink.
One thing I won't forget, how you left me crying on the bed like I was 2 for a cent.
Listen, do you know?
Sure. Wait till the family goes to the open air movie. He brings me perfume. He grabs my arm.
You won't forget me.
How you left the next week.
So I made a mistake. For Christ's sake, don't act like the Queen of Romania.
Don't make me laugh.
What the hell do you want? My head on the plate? Was my life so happy? For Christ's sake, my old man was a bum. I supported the whole damn family, 5 kids and mom. When they grew up, they beat it the hell away like rabbits. Mom died. I went to the war, got clapped down like a bed bug, woke up in a room without a leg. So what do you think? Anybody's got it better than you? I never had a home either. I'm looking too.
So what?
So you're it. You're home for me. A place to live. That's a whole parade. Sickness eating out your heart. Sometimes you meet a girl. She stops it. That's love. So take a chance. Be with me, paradise. What's to lose?
My pride.
Oh, well, what do you want? I say the word and I'll tango on a dime. Don't give me ice when your heart's on fire.
Let me go. What do you want, Mo? What do you want?
You.
You'll be sorry you ever started.
You.
Mo, let me go.
No.
I'm getting up early. Let me go.
No, I got enough fever to blow the whole damn town to hell. You want to go back to him, you just say the word and I'll know what to do.
Mo, I don't know what to say.
Listen to me.
What?
Come away. Well, it's moonlight and roses. We'll lay down, count stars, hear the big ocean making noise. You lay underneath the trees and the champagne flows like.
They say it's a palace on those Havana boats.
It's on your mind.
Mo, I don't care for Sam. I never loved him.
But your kid?
All my life, I waited for this minute.
Me too. I made believe like I was talking just bedroom golf, but it was you and me forever. It was what I meant. Christ, baby, there's one life to live. Live it.
Oh God, I don't know where I stand.
Don't look up there, paradise. You're on a big boat headed south, huh? No more pins and needles in your heart. No more snake juice squirted in your arm. The whole world's green grass, and when you cry, it's because you're happy.
Well, I don't know.
Nobody knows, but you do it and you find out. When you're scared, the answer's 0.
You're hurting my arm.
The doctor said it, right? Cut off your leg to save your life. And they done it. One thing to get another.
I didn't hear a word. But do it, Henny, do it.
Mom can mind the kids. She'll go on forever, Mom. We'll send money back and Easter eggs.
I'll be here.
Get your coat, get it.
Mom.
I know. Just get your coat and hat and kiss the house goodbye.
The man I love.
When I look at my father, I'm sad. Let me die like a dog if I can't get more from life.
Where?
Right here in this house. Yeah, my days won't be for nothing. Let Mom have the dough. I'm 22 and kicking. I'll get along. Did Jake die for us to fight about nickels? No. Awake and sing, he said. Right here, he stood and said it. And the night he died, I saw it like a thunderbolt. I saw he was dead and I was born. I swear to God, I am 1 week old. And I want the whole city to hear it. Fresh blood, arms, we got them. We're glad we're living.
I wouldn't trade you for 2 pitchers and an outfielder. You hold the fort.
So long.
So long.
Hello, I'm Vivian Benish. I was the class of '93 of Zelda, and I'm very honored to be here tonight and also very honored that I am the first and I'm sure not the last of Zelda's students to receive the Zelda Fichandler Award. So that was an amazing thing to carry that legacy forward. And tonight, I'm very honored to be standing here with Jane Alexander and read I'm, by way of introduction, reading Zelda's speech at the Acting Company benefit, May 22nd, 1994, honoring Jane with the John Houseman Award. Dear Jane, memory alters history, but as I remember it, I got a letter from an Arena Stage subscriber in the early 60s bringing to my attention a remarkable young actress playing Nora in Plough in the Stars. For some reason, I think it was in Scotland. I saved the letter. In the mid-60s, Ed Sheeran and I auditioned this remarkable young actress in the offices of Theatre Communications Group, which then had a casting service. I remember you did Nina in the fourth act of The Seagull, a fire and ice soliloquy that blew us away. You trundled down to Washington for a 3-year stay, launching it at 24 with Shaw's St. Joan. My office was perched above the stage door, and I could see everyone checking in for a day's rehearsal. From there, I could keep track of the human life of the theater. Often you rode a bike to work and wore a red coat with a long scarf flowing behind you. Jane was infinitely talented, versatile, and a wonderful community member. As Katrin in Mother Courage, mute, without language, a casualty of the unending war, she had only a drum to bang on to wake up the land. Now she has a drum and she can speak up. Aren't we all lucky that aren't we all the lucky ones that she can and will? When I sent your picture to Howard Sackler in Spain to ask for approval to cast you as Eleanor Bachman in his The Great White Hope, he wrote back, "That's my Ellie, don't look any further." And so, opposite James Earl Jones, you opened in Washington on December 7th, 1967, and your wider career was launched. Broadway, film, television, and all those Tonys and Oscar nominations and Obies and Drama Desk Awards and ecstatic reviews. You continued to work as an actor in our nonprofit, community-rooted institutions. You always came back to the stage. You were on stage in Wendy Wasserstein's The Sisters Rosenzweig when the nomination as head of the National Endowment for the Arts came. The standing ovations grew louder. They wanted to be heard in Washington, I think. Jane's characters are always invested with complexity, depth, originality, and deep humanity. As she transposes parts of her most intimate self to create the life of another. Quote, "Art is the expression of one's perception of life, made manifest through imagination, intellect, emotion, and what we call the soul." She has said that, and she has shown that. In honor of your spirit, for your talent, for the force of your example, for your deep sense of national service, Jane Alexander, citizen artist.
Zelda, she used to write me the most extraordinary letters. And oh, I'm sorry, gotta collect myself. Oh my. Yeah, there was nobody who could make me feel better than Zelda. Especially if I got bad reviews. Anyway, I'm here to wrap up this wonderful evening. And I am going to read to you Zelda's oral statement to the Subcommittee on Interior Appropriations of the National Endowment for the Arts, May 15th, 1990. Chairman and distinguished members of the subcommittee.
Since the late 40s and the early 50s, the American theater has been engaged in a long revolution filled with stops and starts, moods of high energy alternating with despair. The revolution began with a small group of people who were fed up with current ways of making theater and who committed themselves to finding new ones and having them prevail. From a handful of theaters around 1950, the year of Arena's birth, there are now more than 400 all over the United States, playing to over 19 million people a year, regularly producing new American and foreign plays, revivals and world classics, uncovering ever broader audiences through a moderate ticket pricing policy, taking on the central question of cultural diversity on stage and in the audience, training artists and administrators, and hiring more actors and other theater artists outside of New York than are engaged within New York, the erstwhile capital of the American theater. Indeed, it is to these professional theater companies that Broadway now turns for its primary source of talent and energy: actors, directors, designers, and of course the new playwrights, from whom all other production arts flow. Only the multi-million-dollar musical remains as the signifying mark of Broadway. What has been built in roughly the past third of a century is an American national theater, the fastest growth of a new form for the arts in history. The originating thought of our theatrical revolution was really quite simple. It was that theater should stop serving the function of making money, for which it has never been and never will be suited, and help reveal and shape the process of living, for which it is uniquely suited and for which indeed it exists. This new radical thought was that theater should be reclaimed from commerce and restored to itself as a form of art, where life in all its complexity happens before our eyes. Paradoxically, what was needed to make this art form prevail over the controlling influence of the marketplace was money. Federal dollars give us nourishment, warmth, dignity, a place at the table, acknowledgement that we're doing a good job. Without this aggregate of funding from the nonprofit area, from which over half our economic resources come, the American theater, a tough but tender animal, is on the way to becoming an endangered species. It cannot survive on box office income alone, and it needs the knighthood that only the federal government can bestow in order to continue its evolutionary climb. Before the city, there was the village. Before the village, there was the cave. One Paleolithic drawing on the wall of a cave in France depicts a man dressed in the skin of a stag, wearing antlers on his head. Aha, an early actor. Trying even then to imitate some other presence in order to influence nature and imagine his fate. In the rites of the cave, we find the first hints of our civilization. Not alone for the rewards of the hunt or the protection against the barbarian, but for a more meaningful and enchanting life, for the abundance of spirit, to share with others the daylight fantasy and the nighttime dream. I testify on behalf of all of our theaters that we must nourish our storytellers, for without them, we will have lost our childhood, and without our childhood, who we might become.
Wow. Well, As we say thank you for tonight, I just want to take a moment. It's something that is on my heart. It's something that my Jewish brothers always tell me when someone's passed. They say, may their memory be a blessing. And I couldn't think of more blessings than what Zelda has given all of us. Thank you for this evening. Thank you for coming together. Thank you for everybody who put this together. I invite us to step out in the lobby. We're going to have a reception and raise a glass because attention must be paid. Outside, please join us. The reception will be hosted by Hal and Mark Fichandler, and we'll get a chance to purchase these incredible books that must be on everyone's shelf. Thank you, everyone.